The morning fog clung to the ancient stones of Windsor Castle as Captain Marcus Thompson adjusted his ceremonial sword and prepared for another day of service to the crown. 20 years he had served as a royal guard, and in all that time he had never questioned his loyalty or dedication to protecting the royal family. His weathered face bore the marks of countless hours standing at attention, his eyes sharp and observant from years of training to notice even the smallest detail that might pose a threat. Marcus had been assigned to Prince William's personal security detail for the past 8 years, a position that came with the highest level of trust and responsibility. The Prince of Wales had always treated him with respect, often stopping to chat about Marcus's family or asking about his thoughts on security arrangements. It was this personal connection that made what Marcus was about to discover all the more devastating. The day began like any other, with Marcus conducting his routine security sweep of the prince's private offices in Kensington Palace. The morning sun streamed through the tall windows as he methodically checked each room, ensuring that everything was secure before the prince's arrival. It was a task he had performed hundreds of times, moving through the familiar spaces with practiced efficiency. As Marcus entered the prince's private study, he noticed something unusual. A filing cabinet that was normally locked stood slightly ajar, its metal drawer pulled out just enough to reveal a gap. His training immediately kicked in, and he approached the cabinet with caution. Perhaps the cleaning staff had accidentally left it open, or maybe there had been a security breach overnight. Either way, it required investigation. The guard's gloved hands carefully pulled the drawer open, expecting to find the usual collection of official documents and correspondence. Instead, his eyes fell upon a manila folder that seemed out of place among the neatly organized files. The folder was unmarked, unlike the others that bore official seals and proper labeling. Something about its placement seemed deliberate, as if it had been hastily hidden. Marcus hesitated for a moment, knowing that examining the prince's private documents was a serious breach of protocol. However, his duty as head of security meant that any unusual item could potentially pose a threat. He reasoned that if the folder contained sensitive information that could compromise the prince's safety, he needed to assess the risk. With trembling fingers, Marcus opened the folder and found himself staring at a collection of photographs and documents that made his blood run cold. The images showed the prince in various locations, but what shocked Marcus most were the dates and locations marked on each photograph. They corresponded exactly with times when the prince had told his security team he would be elsewhere, attending different engagements or private meetings. The photographs revealed a pattern of deception that had been ongoing for months. While the prince had claimed to be attending charity events or official meetings, the images showed him at luxury hotels, private residences, and exclusive restaurants with individuals who were not part of his official circle. Marcus recognized some of the faces from intelligence briefings as people with questionable backgrounds, including business figures known for their controversial dealings. As Marcus continued to examine the contents, he discovered detailed financial records that painted an even more disturbing picture. Bank statements showed large sums of money being transferred to offshore accounts, with transaction dates that coincided with the secret meetings captured in the photographs. The amounts were staggering, far exceeding what could be explained by legitimate royal finances. The most shocking discovery was a series of typed notes that appeared to be agreements or contracts. The language was carefully worded, but Marcus's military background had taught him to read between the lines. The documents suggested that the prince had been using his position and influence to facilitate business deals that would normally be impossible for members of the royal family to engage in directly. One particular document caught Marcus's attention. It was a handwritten letter bearing the prince's distinctive signature, acknowledging receipt of payments in exchange for what was described as favorable consideration of proposed developments. The letter referenced specific projects that Marcus knew had been subjects of public controversy, including a massive housing development that had faced significant opposition from environmental groups. The implications were staggering. If these documents were authentic, they suggested that Prince William had been secretly involved in corrupt business practices, using his royal status to influence decisions that should have been made through proper governmental channels. The very foundation of the monarchy's claim to moral authority would be undermined if such activities were ever made public. Marcus felt his world spinning as he tried to process what he had discovered. The prince he had sworn to protect, the man he had come to respect and admire, appeared to be living a double life. The weight of this knowledge pressed down on him like a physical burden, making it difficult to breathe in the suddenly stifling atmosphere of the study. His hand shook as he carefully photographed each document with his secure phone, a device issued for official security purposes. Marcus knew that he was crossing a line, but his sense of duty to the Crown and the British people compelled him to preserve evidence of what might be serious crimes. The irony was not lost on him that in trying to protect the monarchy, he might be exposing one of its most important members to scandal and disgrace. As footsteps echoed in the corridor outside, Marcus quickly closed the folder and returned it to its original position in the filing cabinet. His heart pounded as he recognized the familiar sound of the prince's approach, accompanied by his private secretary and other members of the household staff. In a matter of minutes, he would have to stand before Prince William and act as if nothing had changed, despite knowing that everything had changed forever. The door to the study opened, and Prince William entered with his characteristic confident stride. He greeted Marcus with his usual warm smile, asking about his family and commenting on the beautiful morning. To anyone watching, it would have appeared to be just another routine interaction between a royal and his trusted guard. But Marcus felt as if he was looking at a stranger, someone whose true nature had been hidden behind a carefully constructed public persona. Throughout that day, Marcus struggled to maintain his professional composure, while his mind raced with questions and possibilities. He watched the prince's every move, looking for signs that might confirm or contradict what he had discovered. Every conversation, every phone call, every meeting took on new significance, as Marcus tried to understand the full extent of what might be happening. The prince's schedule that day included several public engagements, and Marcus accompanied him as usual, standing at his post while the prince met with various officials and dignitaries. But now, Marcus found himself wondering if any of these seemingly innocent meetings were connected to the secret activities documented in the folder. The paranoia was overwhelming, and he began to question everything he thought he knew about the royal household. As evening approached, Marcus made a decision that would change his life forever. He could not keep this information to himself, but he also could not risk making false accusations against a member of the royal family. The evidence needed to be examined by people with the authority and expertise to determine its authenticity and significance. That night, after his shift ended, Marcus sat in his modest apartment staring at the photographs he had taken of the documents. The weight of responsibility was crushing. If he was wrong about their significance, he could face charges of treason and spend the rest of his life in prison. But if he was right, and he remained silent, he would be complicit in covering up what might be serious crimes against the state and the people of Britain. Marcus thought about his oath of service, the promises he had made to protect not just the physical safety of the royal family, but also the integrity of the institution they represented. The monarchy's power derived from the trust and respect of the British people, built over centuries of tradition and service. If that trust was betrayed, the consequences could be catastrophic for the entire nation. The loyal guard spent the night researching the proper channels for reporting his concerns, knowing that any misstep could have severe consequences for both himself and the royal family. He needed to find someone with both the authority to investigate his claims and the discretion to handle such sensitive information appropriately. The wrong person could either bury the evidence or leak it to the media, causing a scandal that might destroy the monarchy itself. After 3 sleepless nights of agonizing over his discovery, Marcus Thompson made the difficult decision to contact Sir Robert Blackwood, the Queen's private secretary, and one of the most trusted advisors in the royal household. Sir Robert had served the crown for over 30 years and had a reputation for absolute discretion and unwavering loyalty. If anyone could handle this delicate situation properly, it would be him. Marcus arranged to meet Sir Robert under the pretense of discussing enhanced security protocols, a common enough request that wouldn't raise suspicions among other staff members. They met in a secure conference room deep within Buckingham Palace, a space that was routinely swept for surveillance devices and considered one of the safest places in Britain for sensitive conversations. Sir Robert was a distinguished man in his early 60s, with silver hair and piercing blue eyes that seemed to see through any deception. He had weathered numerous royal crises over the decades, from personal scandals to constitutional challenges, always managing to protect the monarchy's reputation while ensuring that the truth was properly addressed. His calm demeanor and analytical mind made him the perfect person to evaluate Marcus's shocking claims. When Marcus began to explain what he had discovered, Sir Robert listened with the practiced patience of someone accustomed to receiving sensitive information. However, as Marcus detailed the contents of the folder and showed the photographs he had taken, the older man's expression grew increasingly grave. The color drained from his face as he realized the potential implications of what was being presented to him. Sir Robert examined each document carefully, his years of experience allowing him to quickly assess their apparent authenticity. The letterhead, signatures, and formatting all appeared consistent with genuine royal correspondence. More importantly, the specific details referenced in the documents could only have come from someone with intimate knowledge of the prince's schedule and activities. The private secretary's mind raced as he considered the various possibilities. Could these documents be elaborate forgeries designed to damage the royal family? Was this part of a foreign intelligence operation aimed at destabilizing the British government? Or was Marcus correct in his assessment that Prince William had been secretly engaging in corrupt activities that violated both royal protocols and British law? As Sir Robert continued his examination, he noticed subtle details that increased his concern about the document's authenticity. The prince's signature matched samples he was familiar with, including minor variations that would be difficult for a forger to replicate. The financial information referenced specific account numbers that Sir Robert knew to be associated with legitimate royal holdings, suggesting that whoever created these documents had access to highly confidential information. The most disturbing aspect of the evidence was how it connected seemingly unconnected events from recent months. There had been questions about certain planning permissions that had been granted unusually quickly, despite significant public opposition. Several environmental groups had complained about the approval process for major development projects, claiming that proper procedures had not been followed. At the time, these incidents had been dismissed as bureaucratic inefficiencies, but the documents suggested a more sinister explanation. Sir Robert realized that he needed to conduct his own investigation before taking any further action. He dismissed Marcus with strict instructions to maintain absolute secrecy about their meeting and to continue his duties as if nothing had happened. The guard was also ordered to monitor the prince's activities closely and report any unusual behavior or suspicious meetings. Over the following weeks, Sir Robert launched a careful and discreet investigation into the allegations against Prince William. Using his extensive network of contacts throughout the government and intelligence services, he began to verify the information contained in the documents. What he discovered only deepened his concerns about the situation. Financial experts confirmed that the account numbers referenced in the documents were real and that large sums of money had indeed been transferred to offshore holdings during the time period specified. Government officials quietly confirmed that several controversial development projects had been approved through expedited processes that bypassed normal oversight procedures. Most damaging of all, surveillance records showed that Prince William had indeed been present at locations where he had claimed to be elsewhere, exactly as depicted in the photographs. The investigation also revealed that the individuals shown meeting with the prince in the photographs had extensive connections to criminal organizations and corrupt business practices. These were not the kind of people that a member of the royal family should be associating with under any circumstances, let alone in secret meetings that violated royal protocols. As the evidence mounted, Sir Robert faced the most difficult decision of his long career. The documents appeared to be authentic, and the allegations they contained suggested that Prince William had been engaged in serious criminal activity that could destroy the monarchy if exposed. However, moving forward with formal accusations against the heir to the throne would also have catastrophic consequences for the royal family and the nation. Sir Robert knew that he needed to confront Prince William directly, but he also needed to be prepared for any possible outcome of such a confrontation. If the prince denied the allegations, there would need to be sufficient evidence to prove the claims. If he admitted to wrongdoing, there would need to be a plan to manage the crisis and minimize damage to the monarchy. The private secretary spent several days developing a strategy for approaching the prince. He decided that the confrontation should take place in absolute privacy, with no witnesses and no official record of the meeting. This would allow for maximum flexibility in how the situation was handled, depending on the prince's response to the allegations. Meanwhile, Marcus continued his duties as the prince's guard, but now every interaction felt like a performance. He watched for signs that the prince suspected anything was amiss, looking for changes in behavior or routine that might indicate awareness of the investigation. The psychological strain was enormous, as Marcus struggled to maintain his professional demeanor while harboring such explosive secrets. The prince seemed to notice nothing unusual, continuing with his regular schedule of official engagements and public appearances. However, Marcus observed that several of the prince's private meetings had been canceled or postponed in recent weeks, possibly suggesting that someone had warned him to be more cautious about his activities. During this period, Marcus also began to notice increased security around certain areas of the royal residences. Additional personnel had been assigned to monitor communications, and there were subtle changes in protocols that suggested heightened concern about information leaks. Whether these measures were related to his discovery or part of routine security updates was impossible to determine. The tension became almost unbearable as days turned into weeks without resolution. Marcus found himself questioning whether he had made the right decision in reporting his discovery. The investigation had taken on a life of its own, and he worried about the consequences for everyone involved, including innocent members of the royal family who had no knowledge of any wrongdoing. Sir Robert was equally troubled by the situation, knowing that every day of delay increased the risk that the information would leak to the media or foreign intelligence services. The longer the investigation continued, the more people would necessarily become aware of the allegations, making it increasingly difficult to control the narrative and protect the monarchy's reputation. The private secretary also had to consider the international implications of the scandal. Britain's relationships with allied nations could be severely damaged if it became known that the heir to the throne was involved in corrupt activities. The economic consequences alone could be devastating, as investor confidence in British institutions would plummet, and the pound sterling would likely face significant devaluation. As Sir Robert finalized his plans for confronting Prince William, he received an unexpected development that changed everything. Intelligence sources reported that foreign agents had been making inquiries about the prince's financial activities, suggesting that news of the investigation may have already begun to leak. This raised the terrifying possibility that hostile nations might be preparing to use the scandal as a weapon against Britain. The race against time had begun. Sir Robert knew that he could no longer delay the confrontation with Prince William, regardless of how difficult or dangerous it might prove to be. The very survival of the monarchy, and possibly the stability of the British government, now hung in the balance. On a cold Thursday morning, Sir Robert sent word to Prince William requesting an immediate private meeting on a matter of utmost urgency. The message was deliberately vague, providing no details about the subject to be discussed, but the tone made it clear that this was not a routine administrative matter. The prince's response came quickly, agreeing to meet that afternoon in his private study at Kensington Palace, the same room where Marcus had made his shocking discovery just weeks earlier. The afternoon meeting between Sir Robert Blackwood and Prince William was scheduled for 3 o'clock, but the private secretary arrived 30 minutes early to ensure complete privacy. He personally checked the study for any surveillance devices and instructed all staff to avoid the corridor during the scheduled meeting time. The gravity of what was about to unfold required absolute secrecy, as the conversation could determine the future of the British monarchy. Marcus Thompson stood guard outside the study, his usual post, but today the weight of his knowledge made every minute feel like an eternity. He knew that inside that room, the evidence he had discovered would finally be presented to the prince. The loyal guard wondered if this would be his last day of service, whether his actions would ultimately be seen as heroic or treasonous. When Prince William entered the study, he appeared relaxed and confident, showing no signs of awareness about what was to come. He greeted Sir Robert with his characteristic warmth, offering tea and commenting on the unusually cold weather. The prince's demeanor was that of a man who believed himself to be attending a routine administrative meeting, perhaps about upcoming royal engagements or protocol adjustments. Sir Robert began the conversation with careful diplomatic language, expressing his deep loyalty to the crown and his commitment to protecting the royal family's interests. He explained that sensitive information had come to light that required immediate discussion and resolution. The prince listened politely, but his expression began to change as he sensed the serious tone of the conversation. When Sir Robert finally placed the folder of evidence on the prince's desk, the atmosphere in the room transformed completely. Prince William's face went pale as he recognized the documents that he thought had been safely hidden in his private filing cabinet. His hands trembled slightly as he opened the folder and saw the photographs and financial records that documented his secret activities. For several long minutes, Prince William sat in stunned silence, his mind racing as he tried to understand how his carefully guarded secrets had been discovered. He looked up at Sir Robert with a mixture of fear, anger, and desperation, knowing that his entire world was about to collapse around him. The prince who had spent his life preparing to be king now faced the possibility of losing everything he held dear. Sir Robert watched the prince's reaction carefully, looking for any sign of remorse or willingness to cooperate in finding a solution to the crisis. Instead, he saw a man whose primary concern seemed to be about how the discovery would affect his own position and status. There were no immediate expressions of regret for his actions or concern about the damage he had done to the monarchy's reputation. The prince's first response was to demand to know who had accessed his private documents and how the investigation had been conducted without his knowledge. His tone became increasingly aggressive as he asserted his right to privacy and questioned the authority of anyone to examine his personal affairs. It was clear that Prince William's initial strategy was to focus on the methods used to uncover the evidence, rather than addressing the substance of the allegations. Sir Robert patiently explained that the discovery had been made during routine security procedures, and that the investigation had been conducted with the utmost discretion to protect the royal family's interests. He emphasized that everyone involved had acted out of loyalty to the crown and concern for the integrity of the monarchy. However, these explanations did little to calm the prince's growing agitation. As the confrontation continued, Prince William began to offer explanations for his actions that only made the situation worse. He claimed that the meetings documented in the photographs were part of unofficial diplomatic efforts to promote British business interests abroad. The financial transactions, he insisted, were legitimate investments that had been properly authorized through channels that Sir Robert was not privy to. These explanations were quickly dismantled by Sir Robert's thorough knowledge of royal protocols and financial procedures. No such diplomatic activities could be conducted without the knowledge and approval of the Foreign Office. No legitimate investments could be made through the offshore accounts and secretive transactions documented in the evidence. Every justification offered by the prince only served to highlight how serious his violations of law and protocol had been. The most damaging moment came when Sir Robert presented evidence of specific planning decisions that had been influenced by the prince's interventions. Environmental assessments had been altered, public consultation periods had been shortened, and opposition groups had been deliberately excluded from decision-making processes. These actions had not only violated government procedures, but had also caused real harm to communities and ecosystems across Britain. When confronted with this evidence, Prince William's composure finally cracked completely. He abandoned his attempts to justify his actions and instead began pleading for Sir Robert's help in covering up the scandal. The prince argued that exposing his activities would destroy the monarchy and cause irreparable damage to Britain's international reputation. He begged for an opportunity to quietly cease his involvement in questionable activities without facing public exposure. Sir Robert was deeply saddened to see the prince's reaction, as it confirmed his worst fears about the situation. Rather than showing genuine remorse for his actions or concern for those who had been harmed, Prince William seemed primarily focused on protecting himself from consequences. This suggested that the corruption ran deeper than just a few questionable decisions and indicated a fundamental moral failure that could not be easily addressed. The private secretary explained that the situation had already progressed beyond the point where it could be quietly contained. Too many people were now aware of the allegations, and foreign intelligence services had begun making inquiries that suggested the information was starting to leak. Any attempt to cover up the scandal would likely fail and would only make the eventual exposure more damaging. As the reality of his situation became clear, Prince William's behavior became increasingly erratic. He alternated between angry denials and desperate pleas, sometimes within the same sentence. The prince, who had always projected an image of calm competence, was now revealed to be capable of spectacular poor judgment when faced with serious pressure. The most shocking moment of the confrontation came when Prince William suggested that Marcus Thompson, the guard who had discovered the evidence, should be arrested for treason and that the documents should be destroyed as stolen property. This reaction showed a complete lack of understanding about the seriousness of his own actions and a willingness to destroy an innocent man's life to protect himself. Sir Robert firmly rejected this suggestion and explained that Captain Thompson had acted with complete propriety in reporting his discovery through appropriate channels. The suggestion that a loyal servant should be punished for exposing potential crimes only further demonstrated the prince's moral failings and made it clear that he was not capable of handling the crisis responsibly. As the meeting stretched into its third hour, it became apparent that Prince William was not going to accept responsibility for his actions or cooperate in finding an honorable solution to the crisis. His primary concern remained his own survival and status, with little regard for the broader consequences of his behavior. This realization forced Sir Robert to confront the possibility that the heir to the throne might be fundamentally unfit for the position he was destined to inherit. The conversation was interrupted by an urgent message from the palace communications office. Media outlets had begun making inquiries about unusual activity in the royal household, suggesting that rumors of a scandal were already beginning to circulate. The window for managing the crisis privately was rapidly closing, and decisive action would soon be required. Prince William's reaction to this news was to panic completely. He began making increasingly desperate suggestions, including fleeing the country or claiming that he was suffering from a mental health crisis that affected his judgment. These proposals only reinforced Sir Robert's growing conviction that the prince was not capable of handling the responsibilities of kingship with the dignity and wisdom that the role required. As the meeting finally concluded, Sir Robert informed Prince William that he would need 24 hours to consult with other senior advisors about how to proceed. The prince was instructed to maintain his normal schedule and avoid any actions that might attract additional attention to his activities. Most importantly, he was ordered to have no contact with any of the individuals shown in the compromising photographs. The private secretary left the meeting deeply troubled by what he had witnessed. The man who was supposed to become Britain's next king had demonstrated a complete lack of moral leadership when faced with the consequences of his own actions. Rather than showing the character and integrity that the monarchy required, Prince William had revealed himself to be selfish, corrupt, and potentially dangerous to the institution he was meant to protect. The 24 hours that followed Sir Robert's confrontation with Prince William were the most critical in the modern history of the British monarchy. Emergency meetings were held throughout the night as senior advisors, constitutional experts, and security officials gathered to address an unprecedented crisis. The very foundations of the royal succession were now in question, and decisions made in the coming hours would determine the future of the crown for generations to come. Sir Robert had called together a secret council consisting of the most trusted and experienced members of the royal household. Present were the Lord Chamberlain, the private secretary to the king, the head of royal security, and 2 constitutional lawyers who had sworn absolute secrecy about the proceedings. This group represented centuries of combined experience in managing royal crises, but none had ever faced a situation quite like this one. The evidence against Prince William was presented in meticulous detail, with each document and photograph examined by experts who could verify its authenticity. Financial specialists confirmed that the transactions were real and involved sums that could only have come from someone with access to royal resources. Intelligence analysts verified that the individuals shown meeting with the prince were indeed connected to criminal organizations and corrupt business practices. As the night wore on, the full scope of Prince William's activities became increasingly clear. The corruption was not limited to a few isolated incidents, but represented a systematic abuse of his position that had been ongoing for over 2 years. Millions of pounds had been diverted from royal accounts to fund personal investments and lifestyle choices that violated every principle of royal duty and public service. The constitutional implications were staggering. If Prince William remained in the line of succession, his eventual coronation as king would place a known criminal at the head of the British state. The oath he would swear to uphold the law would be meaningless coming from someone who had systematically violated those same laws for personal gain. The moral authority of the monarchy, built over centuries of tradition and service, would be destroyed overnight. Meanwhile, Prince William spent the night in his private apartments, consumed by panic and desperate schemes to escape the consequences of his actions. He made several attempts to contact associates who might help him flee the country, but his communications were being monitored by security services who had been briefed on the situation. Every phone call and message only provided additional evidence of his guilt and his complete lack of remorse for his actions. The prince's behavior during this crucial period was perhaps the most damning evidence of his unfitness for the throne. Rather than accepting responsibility and working to minimize damage to the monarchy, He focused entirely on saving himself. He attempted to destroy additional evidence, contacted foreign accounts to move money beyond the reach of British authorities, and even suggested that his own brother, Prince Harry, should be blamed for orchestrating a conspiracy against him. As dawn approached, Sir Robert received a call that changed everything. King Charles III had been informed of the crisis and was demanding an immediate briefing on the situation. The monarch had been deliberately kept unaware of the investigation to protect him from having to make impossible choices about his own son. But the situation had progressed beyond the point where such protection was possible. The meeting between Sir Robert and King Charles was one of the most difficult conversations in the private secretary's long career. Watching a father learn of his son's betrayal of everything the monarchy represented was heartbreaking, but the king's reaction demonstrated the strength of character that made him worthy of the crown. Despite his personal anguish, Charles immediately understood that his duty to the nation must take precedence over his paternal instincts. King Charles spent several hours reviewing all the evidence personally, asking detailed questions about each aspect of the investigation. His legal training and decades of experience with constitutional matters allowed him to quickly grasp the full implications of his son's actions. The king's primary concern was not protecting Prince William from consequences, but rather protecting the monarchy from the damage that had already been done. The most shocking revelation came when additional financial records were uncovered showing that Prince William had actually stolen money directly from royal charities. Funds that had been donated by the British public to help disadvantaged children and support military veterans had been diverted to offshore accounts controlled by the prince. This betrayal went beyond mere corruption and represented a fundamental violation of the trust that the people had placed in the royal family. When confronted with this evidence, Prince William's facade of cooperation finally crumbled completely. He became belligerent and threatening, suggesting that he would expose embarrassing secrets about other family members if any action was taken against him. The prince, who had once been seen as the future of the monarchy, now revealed himself to be willing to destroy the entire institution to protect his own interests. This final betrayal made King Charles's decision inevitable. In a private ceremony witnessed only by the most senior constitutional officers, Prince William was formally stripped of all his titles and removed from the line of succession. The documents were signed with the heavy knowledge that they were ending not just a royal career, but potentially changing the course of British history forever. The official announcement was carefully crafted to minimize damage to the monarchy while being honest about the seriousness of Prince William's crimes. The statement explained that the former prince had voluntarily renounced his titles due to irreconcilable differences with his constitutional duties, and that he would be leaving public life permanently. Criminal charges would be filed separately by appropriate authorities. The reaction from Prince William was explosive and predictable. He immediately contacted media outlets claiming that he was the victim of a conspiracy and threatening to reveal state secrets if his removal was not reversed. These threats only confirmed the wisdom of the decision to remove him from the succession, as they demonstrated his complete willingness to harm Britain's national interests to serve his own purposes. Security measures around other members of the royal family were immediately increased, as intelligence services warned that Prince William might attempt to create additional scandals or even engage in acts of sabotage against his own family. The man who had once been second in line to the throne was now considered a potential threat to national security. Captain Marcus Thompson, the loyal guard whose discovery had started the entire crisis, was quietly commended for his service and transferred to a position protecting other members of the royal family. His courage in reporting the evidence, despite the personal risks involved, was recognized as an act of true patriotism that had potentially saved the monarchy from catastrophic damage. The public's reaction to the announcement was mixed but generally supportive of the difficult decision that had been made. While many were shocked by the revelations about Prince William's behavior, most recognized that removing him from the succession was necessary to preserve the integrity of the crown. The monarchy's approval ratings actually increased in the weeks following the announcement, as people appreciated the royal family's willingness to hold their own members accountable for criminal behavior. International allies quietly expressed relief that the situation had been handled decisively and transparently. Foreign governments had been increasingly concerned about intelligence suggesting corruption within the British royal family, and the quick action to address the problem helped maintain confidence in Britain's institutions and leadership. Prince William himself disappeared from public view completely, reportedly leaving Britain to live in exile in a country without extradition treaties. His former associates were arrested and charged with various crimes related to the corruption scheme, providing additional validation for the decision to remove him from royal duties. The crisis had lasting effects on how the monarchy operated, with new oversight procedures implemented to prevent similar situations from occurring in the future. Financial transparency was increased, security protocols were strengthened, and additional training was provided to all family members about their constitutional responsibilities and ethical obligations. King Charles, despite the personal tragedy of losing a son to corruption and exile, emerged from the crisis with enhanced public respect for his leadership during an unprecedented constitutional emergency. His willingness to put duty before family demonstrated the kind of moral courage that the British people expected from their monarch. The line of succession was revised to reflect Prince William's removal, with his children initially remaining eligible pending further investigation into whether they had been affected by their father's criminal activities. This decision reflected the monarchy's commitment to protecting innocent family members while ensuring that the throne would not be inherited by anyone connected to the corruption scandal. In the end, the crisis that began with a loyal guard's accidental discovery of hidden documents had fundamentally transformed the British monarchy. What could have been a catastrophic scandal that destroyed public faith in the royal family instead became a demonstration of the institution's ability to police itself and maintain its moral authority even when facing the most difficult of circumstances.